Today we're going to talk about independent and dependent clauses, what they are, how they work, and why they matter in English grammar. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a verb, but not all clauses can stand alone. Some do just fine on their own, while others need a little help. That's where independent and dependent clauses come in. An independent clause is a complete sentence. It expresses a full thought all on its own. It has everything it needs to stand by itself. For example, Lena loves to read books. That makes perfect sense on its own. So does the sun is shining brightly. These are independent clauses because they don't need anything else to be complete sentences. Now let's talk about dependent clauses. A dependent clause also has a subject and a verb, but it doesn't express a complete thought. It leaves us hanging, making us ask, what happened next? If I say, because Lena loves to read books, or although the sun is shining brightly, those aren't complete sentences. They need an independent clause to make sense. That's why they're called dependent. They depend on something else. We use different words to join dependent clauses to independent clauses, and these words help us understand the relationship between the two. There are three main tools we use for this: subordinating conjunctions, relative pronouns, and conjunctive adverbs. Subordinating conjunctions introduce adverbial clauses, which answer questions like why, when, where, or under what conditions something happens. Some common subordinating conjunctions are because, although, when, and if. For example, I stayed inside because it was raining. The phrase because it was raining tells us why I stayed inside. Although I was tired, I finished my homework. Here, although I was tired tells us the contrast between being tired and still finishing the homework. We cheered when the game ended. The clause when the game ended tells us when we cheered. And if you study, you will pass the test tells us the condition under which you will pass the test. Relative pronouns introduce adjective clauses, which describe or give more information about a noun. Some common relative pronouns are who, which, and that. For example, the girl who won the race is my friend. The clause who won the race gives us more information about the girl. The book, which was on the table, is mine. Here, which was on the table tells us more about the book. And this is the movie that I love tells us which movie is being talked about. Relative pronouns help dependent clauses act like adjectives because they modify nouns. Conjunctive adverbs help connect ideas between independent and dependent clauses. They show relationships like cause and effect, contrast, and sequence. Some common ones are however, therefore, and meanwhile. For example, I wanted to play outside, however, it was raining. The word however shows contrast. She studied hard, therefore she passed the test. Therefore shows cause and effect. I was baking cookies, meanwhile my brother was watching TV. Meanwhile tells us what was happening at the same time. So why do we need dependent clauses? Well, they make our writing more interesting and detailed. Instead of just saying, I ate lunch, we can say, I ate lunch because I was hungry. Instead of the sandwich was delicious, we can say, the sandwich that I made was delicious. Dependent clauses help us express more complex ideas and add depth to our writing. There are three types of dependent clauses: noun clauses, adverbial clauses, and adjective clauses. A noun clause acts as a noun in the sentence. It can be a subject, object, or complement. For example, what you said was surprising. Here, what you said is acting as the subject. She doesn't know where he went. The clause where he went is the object of know. And the problem is that we are late. The clause that we are late is a complement that tells us what the problem is. Adverbial clauses answer questions like when, where, why, how, and under what condition something happens. After we finished dinner, we watched a movie. The phrase after we finished dinner tells us when we watched a movie. She runs faster than I do. The phrase then I do tells us how she runs. If it rains, we will stay inside. The phrase if it rains tells us under what condition we will stay inside. An adjective clause describes a noun, just like an adjective does. The dog that lives next door is friendly. The phrase that lives next door describes the dog. My friend who loves music plays the piano. The phrase who loves music tells us more about my friend. Dependent clauses add detail and complexity to our writing, making it more interesting and informative. Keep practicing, and soon you'll be writing with confidence.